Coming up on Unpacked.
As I switched the radio on, they said, news just in, Westner takes bullet right side to the head.
I asked myself each day, why didn't I act sooner?
Was there a note or anything that could have indicated what his thoughts and feelings were at the time?
I wish maybe in a dream or wherever, he can still come back and say, Auntie, this is what had happened.
The decision to take his own life was made by him.
Losing a loved one to suicide, what a devastating experience. Our guests today are here to share their stories. Let's unpack. Chane Todd is the daughter of Wayne Westner, one of South Africa's most celebrated golf players. A successful businesswoman and high achiever, she's also become a mental health activist following an incident at the family home that led to her father committing suicide. Philiswa Mncube was born in a small village in the KZN. Coming from a tough background, she was fortunate enough to receive a bursary to study further and move to Durban. It was on the 12th of July 2018 that she received a call from home that her nephew, who she had raised as her own, had committed suicide. Both ladies are here to share their stories. Let's unpack. Chane, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Lebo. It's such a privilege to be here today.
And joining us via video con, we have Philiswa. Philiswa, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lebo, for having me. It's such a pleasure to join you all.
I would like to jump in with a tough question. Would you say you lost your father to suicide or to depression?
Sure, it's such a tough question, Lebo. Truthfully speaking, I believe that they go hand in hand. I was actually saying to someone earlier today that if I look back at the time, there weren't any signs. However, if I look back now, there were so many signs to look out for.
Philiswa, would you say you lost your nephew to suicide or to depression?
I would say depression. I would say it was depression. Now, especially similar sentiments as well. I think at the time, because no one anticipated that somebody would do something like that. So we assume that people are okay until, we lose them, and then we start to look back and we try to find reasons. And I think we start to see those cracks in between, and we realize that, oh no, I think somewhere here or there, it was depression.
So Chane, take me back to what your father was like. Tell me what kind of a person he was.
I absolutely love speaking about my father, Lebo, because I believe it's my way of carrying him with me in my everyday life today. To begin, we actually share a birthday. So we were born on the same day, and my mom still remembers it vividly as the most amazing day of her life, and them as a couple. And from there, everybody just said I was my dad's brown-eyed girl. I went everywhere with him. My dad was such a vivacious and charismatic character. Still to this day, I've never met anyone like him. And he started off as a young golfer. And naturally, when you are beginning to chase your dreams in life, not many people believe in you.
Yeah.
And but if you believe in yourself, you're halfway there. And that was certainly the case with my dad. He got recognized by Gary Player at a very young age, and that's actually where he made his start in his career. So many people throughout South Africa will remember him as the phenomenal golfer he was. But as a father, he wasn't just such an amazing dad. He was the kind of dad that you had such a deep friendship with. There was no conversation that was off bounds with him. You could speak to him about anything. And what I value most and remember vividly is our relationship consisted of sharing any and every dream that we set our minds to. And he believed in you so much so that he would help you achieve those dreams. And we were, obviously, myself, my brother and my sister were born here in South Africa, but we immigrated to Ireland to be closer to him when he was on the European tour. Naturally, when we lived here in South Africa, if he was on the European tour, we would go months without seeing him.
Yeah.
And when we immigrated to Ireland, we could see him weeks at a time. And in 1996, he won the World Cup alongside Ernie Els. And it was such a monumental moment, not only for our country, but for us as a family. It was living testament to the fact that you could do anything you set your mind to. And shortly after that, he was on a tour in Madrid, and he walked over a bridge and it snapped and he landed on his ankle and he broke his foot in so many different places that they actually took his card away to play golf because unfortunately he couldn't practice. So it was such a devastating effect on him because it was almost as if he had lost everything he had spent his whole life working towards.
And I think, just from what you've described of the type of person that he was, I'm sure a big part of that personality, so few people around the world would have even got insight to. But we will come back, to the details, more of the details of his life. I'd like to find out about Thanda and the kind of boy that he was, Philiswa.
Oh, wow. When I think about him, there's just one word that comes to mind: peaceful. I think nowadays, kids grow up to be different types of people. Even though his life was short-lived, he committed suicide when he was only 13.
Yeah.
But I think all his life, because I've been a part of it from day one, he kind of brought about the sense of just peace and calm around us, within himself. He wasn't a child to give you problems. Even as he was growing, he didn't even have a temper. So for me, I feel like he won more hearts in that regard because he was loving, he was kind, he was soft. And you could tell that he was going to grow and become one of those men who we can depend on. And it's such a shame because I think we need a lot of those men today. And I had envisioned him becoming that. So in his early ages or in his life, however short it was, he was just always cheerful. He was just always kind. And he made you feel secure just by being, in his presence. And there is not much to say, which is really emotional for me to actually even express, because I feel he was robbed of a very good life that he could have had, but, in his, I don't know. Yeah.
So maybe what you can do is tell me what your relationship was like, because, I understand the two of you were actually very close.
Yes. So my life is as complicated as many of South Africans, obviously. So his brother, his father, who's my brother, because he's my nephew, raised me. So he was practically my father. So when he was born, I was also lucky to find sort of like a sibling, but I took him in as my son because 3 years later after he was born, his father sadly passed on. So we have had that relationship ever since he was born. So he sort of like became my own in a sense. So I was his everything. He was my everything at the time. He was the one person that I knew I could lean on in a sense. And I think he also shared the similar sentiments. We loved each other. We practically did everything in his early ages until I had to move, obviously, because I'm in Durban now. So home is at the village, in a small village in Kettle Ridge. So our relationship was the one way, I think, for those people around us who could see us, they would say that he was my own, like he was my son. So I know a lot of people say I lost a nephew, but it feels like I lost my own son. So our relationship was that it was just filled with love and excitement. Whenever we were together, we just bonded from the time he was born. And he just grew like that, knowing that I had this pillar. And I think as a child also who had to go through so much and had to deal with so much trauma, I could also say that I learned to love through him, because he showed me a side of life that maybe I didn't have, because I didn't have a father or a mother of my own. But being in a situation where his father took me in as his own, it kind of like made me feel part of a family. And I wanted to transfer that. I wanted him to feel what his father was able to give to me. So it was more like I was paying it forward. But after he left, his father passing on, it was more like God had given me a son of my own. So in a way, it was like the roles were now reversed. So I was able to do what his father was able to do for me. And I just loved every minute of it. And I loved him more than life itself.
And I think no one can take away from you how you loved him or what your relationship looked like. So if for you, yes, technically he's your nephew, but you feel he was your son, then I think that is how we will honor him today. I mean, from your side, what was your relationship with Dad like? Other than you being the brown-eyed girl, tell me the details of your relationship.
So we were inseparable. In fact, my mom actually says to this day, she'll still look at me if I make an expression on my face or use a phrase, she'll say, "You are your father's child through and through." And I take such pride in that because whenever my dad walked into a room, he almost gained everybody's attention. He made it his mission in life to see how everybody was doing. And if they were having a bad day, how he could enrich their lives, how he could help them in that moment in their life. And our relationship, as I said, we were born on the same day. We shared the same sense of humor. He had such an amazing sense of humor. And he had a way of implementing a sense of humor no matter how difficult a circumstance was. And so from a young age, I remember even being 4 years old following him on tour in Scotland. And ordinarily what would happen is the players' children would normally go to a care facility while they played. And the ushers tried to take me to that facility and I refused. I said, I am following my dad through the 18 holes, and I did.
Yeah.
And my parents separated when I was 13 and I chose to live with my dad. I love my parents equally, but we just shared such an amazing bond. And as I say, I'd never felt, even throughout my teenage years, the need to almost rebel because we just had such an open and transparent relationship. I think the only moments I remember him probably being angry with me, so to speak, is when I had my nose pierced. But even up until I met my husband, although he never voiced it, you could see he was very overprotective.
Yeah.
So even the day he met my husband, I was so nervous because I wanted him to love him the way I did, and he really did.
Yeah.
I remember and treasure every single moment vividly and just perfectly divine. A lot of people knew him for his reputation in the sporting industry in South Africa and around the world. But what they didn't know about him is that he was as humble as they came.
Yeah.
He was friends with presidents, royalty, celebrities, yet you would find him at home in a sarong, tapping his foot, singing completely offbeat to whatever the song was, and cooking dinner for his family. That's who he was.
Yeah.
He didn't have a materialistic bone in his body, and he was wildly passionate about his country. He stood firm in the fact that because he traveled around the world, there was simply no other country more beautiful than South Africa.
And many of us can agree to that.
Yeah.
Philiswa, talk to me about that fateful day and maybe if there were any relevant details in the build up to that day.
Well, I think what kind of happened was, because I like I said, I had to move and I'm in Durban now because I had to study first. Now I'm working. So when I was here, he stayed at home with his biological mom. So we would only see each other during holidays. So he had just came back from visiting me. And then it was just a week before the schools opened for second term. It was in July. It actually was this actual week, which is kind of like really strange that he decided to take his life.
Wow.
I didn't have much detail of what was going on. But I remember because, like I said, I took him as my own. So I had plans in place to kind of take him in on a full-time basis. So at the village, the schools there, as much as they're okay, but I felt they were not really good for the type of education that I wanted for him. And I kind of felt that it would have been great if he were to move here. So when his mom and I were talking, it kind of came out in the conversation that he's not doing well in his school. And the teacher had actually called the mom in to say that he feels he's struggling with his school. I'm not sure. I've Googled so many things now, and I think one of the disorders that have actually came about, I don't even know whether that's the right terminology, is that I think maybe there was a form of dyslexia there for him because he could orally articulate and he was good, but when it came to writing things down, he wasn't doing well.
Yeah.
So we had that conversation, and I think in my conversation with him, I kind of told him, listen, boy, you need to work hard, because I think moving on for the following year, I'm going to have to apply for you this side, so I'm going to need your report. And as a humble child that he was like, okay, Nyabuzo, Auntie, thank you so much, and yeah, sure, I'm going to work, on my studies. So we were happy that it was going to reopen for the following term, and school was starting, I think, on Tuesday of that week. And
just to interject there,
Yes.
and for also for the viewers and everyone, where was his mother the whole time?
The mother was home with him the whole time.
Okay.
After having lost our brother, and I had moved here, the mother was the person that he was staying with. So he was staying with mom and grandma at home. So, but mom had to look for part-time jobs because we are from a very poor background ourselves. So in between, she would have to leave during the day to go and work and then come home in the afternoon. Since it was holidays, she was actually out on the day. She had gone to work and left him at home with grandma. So that day when it happened, she too also got a call from wherever she was at the time to say, quickly come home, something that had happened. So I was also one of those people where everyone from my community kept calling me, even people that I didn't know. I'm like, what's happening? And they're like, oh no, Tanda, what? I don't understand what you mean. It's like, oh no, he has decided to take his life. We found him hanging from the outside window at the back of one of our houses at home. I'm like, what? It just didn't connect with me. Like, we just spoke the other day. It was okay. There was nothing except for that incident of obviously having a conversation about school and him obviously having to do better in order for him to move here. But there was nothing, there were no implications or anything in between that we could have realized and said, oh no, maybe they had gotten into an argument with mom, or maybe he was being bullied at school. There were no other reports except for the fact that we just got a call that it's 2 in the afternoon and your son is hanging by the bedroom window outside.
Sure. So you get that phone call that's telling you this. I mean, who's the first person that actually said the words?
It was one of our relatives as well, because they had also rushed down to see, because we, like I said, we're from a village.
Yeah.
So you know how the setups are in the villages. People of the same family, they live nearby, but not in one house.
Yes.
So when they got the news, they rushed in there and everyone kept calling. And I think everyone kept calling, but they couldn't articulate what was going on. Like they just said, quickly rush home, but I'm in Durban. So how am I supposed to get there? And then eventually one of my brothers, bigger brothers as well, just called and said, listen, this is what had happened. And yeah, he's gone.
So he's the one that actually said the words?
Yes.
And when the words were said to you that he's gone and it was explained how he was gone, did you actually believe it?
I think I still don't believe it even today, Lebo, if I can use those words. I think there was a moment there for me where I just kind of like, everything just went blur. Like, huh? The conversation just didn't make sense. I mean, like I said, there are certain things that you would expect from certain people, but he wasn't one of those people where you can be found even in a situation where you would be fighting or doing something. So something as drastic as taking your own life. I couldn't believe. I'm like, what are you saying? And then they said, this is what we say. I'm like, no, it cannot be. I still don't believe it today, but eventually, I think maybe waking up the following day made me realize that, yeah, it has happened.
So, I mean, what kind of questions did you have in terms of yourself? Because we know there are unique feelings that the loved ones who are left behind after somebody takes their life. It's very different to just, death due to natural causes or to, death as a result of murder, for example. With this situation, it's very unique. And somebody who's 13 years old is very young.
I think even today, I feel like it's not really questions, but it's more blame. I ask myself each day, why didn't I act sooner? I'm under the impression that perhaps if I had take him in when I thought about it, the situation would have been different. Or if it were to happen, because we have to eventually understand that everything happens with God's timing. At least I would have been around to notice some of the signs and even get the closure that I needed. You know, when you just said, bye, I will see you later to someone, and then the next thing, there's no later, and there's not even an official goodbye. I think that is what kind of gets to me the most. The fact that of all the people, because I had the most strongest bond, or like the strongest bond with him, even even to his mom, that I feel like even the mom didn't have the kind of love that the two of us had. So for him to have done that and not even wait for me, or not even come to me for advice, or even vent if there was something going on, I think for that week I got angry at him as well. Sometimes we even speak to just air or whatever, and I vented and I shouted as a parent would, and I was like, why would you do that? Like, you knew you had a safe space in me. You knew you can always rely on me when you needed something, but why this time in particular, and why this as a solution? Like, surely we would have worked something out. But I knew there was no helping the situation because it was too late and it was no more. So even still today, I still try, because I have kids of my own now. And I think this is the part that really gets to me the most, because I think the trauma of however he ended up taking his life has kind of left this sort of way on me, where I'm constantly thinking about death when I shouldn't. And my son, who's currently 12 years old today, it's like I'm watching over him like a hawk, because I feel like I need to know. Like, there are things now that I'm starting to do that I wouldn't normally do. If we find ourselves in a situation where we disagree, I quickly, try and talk to him. I'm like, are you okay with this? It's like I'm literally walking on eggshells, and I don't know what to do, because I feel like, having lost my first son, because that's what I call him, I don't want to find myself in a situation where I lose my other, because I do not know what it was that kind of made him react the way that he did. So it's kind of shaped everything about me. I love all my kids, and I think it's a way where I'm trying to justify, and maybe some of the things that I do with my kids now are some of the things that I would have loved to do with him. So it's like I'm still trying to fill the gap, but I know I cannot. But I still wonder why. And I wish maybe in a dream or whatever, you can still come back and say, Auntie, this is what had happened. And maybe understand things from his point of view. But I still would have said, I was here, I'm here. Why take your life?
Was there a note or anything that could have indicated what his thoughts and feelings were at the time?
There was no note, which is why it was kind of sad for us, because we didn't even get that. And when we went to his friends, who were also very young, they didn't give us anything. I think for me, I went as far as even calling it murder at some point. And I went as far as involving the police. We did a lot of investigation, because I honestly still don't believe that it was him taking his life. We did so much to try and prove that he did not take his life.
Yeah.
But the autopsy still came back and said, yes, it was through the strangling, and he had indeed taken his life.
And I think it's completely understandable, because in so many ways, if you have to accept the reality that he took his own life, you have to accept many other things that you may not be ready to face and deal with.
Correct.
Yeah. From your side, I mean, take me to that day and any, relevant information in the build up to the day of your father taking his own life.
So, Lebo, I think one of the many factors that was especially difficult to process is that my dad was probably in the prime of his life. He had so much to look forward to. He had aligned himself with the PGA Tour to conduct a teaching aid to teach people how to play golf. 10 days after he died, he was meant to be at the SA Open launching this aid. And 3 weeks after that, he was going to fly to Florida. So he had so much to look forward to. I was 7 months pregnant with my first son, a baby that we had desperately struggled to conceive. And we were, as a family, we were so excited. And the only catastrophic moment that had happened in my dad's life is that 3 weeks prior to him passing, he had separated from his wife. And he adored his wife. He was madly in love with her. In fact, he said, she's my soulmate.
As in your stepmother?
My stepmother,
yes. Yes.
And because of it, they had a beautiful beach home at the coast, and she was staying there, and he was staying with my sister. And we wanted him to stay with my sister because we wanted to make sure he was okay.
Yeah.
And initially, when they had decided that they were going to separate, he was devastated. He didn't want to leave his room. He didn't want to talk about it. He was absolutely devastated. But each and every day that passed thereafter, he seemed to be doing a lot better. And in fact, my husband and I actually went on holiday because we always go away with his family over Christmas. And the only reason I went is because he sounded so much better. He then started walking every day with my sister, and to the point that the day before he passed, I'll never forget, I was on the phone to him and I said to him, Dad, I've heard you've lost 13 kilos. I'm so proud of you. And he said, no, don't congratulate me yet. I've still got 17 to go. And I was like, I'm so proud of you. So he had so much to look forward to. He had paid his rent the week before. Just so many thoughts went through my mind, like, why would he do that if he was going to do that? Why would he do that? And my sister spoke to him an hour before he passed. My brother was with him 20 minutes before it happened. And that day, I'll never forget, not even 1 second about it. My dad's favorite creature on this earth was the martial eagle. And we were in the Pilanesberg, and I was sitting having a cup of tea, and this martial eagle flew and landed right next to me. And I thought that was so peculiar because I couldn't believe that this martial eagle was right in front of me and flew away. And that eagle landed at the exact time of his death. And I saw my husband walk away on his phone, which I thought was quite odd because Chaz never takes calls, not in my presence. And I was in my room, and he walked in and he closed the door behind him. And the look he gave me already told me I was about to hear the worst thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
But when I thought the worst thing, I had imagined my father and his father-in-law didn't really see eye to eye. So I had imagined worst case scenario that they themselves maybe got into an argument that escalated. Never in my wildest dreams did I think he was going to tell me that my dad took his own life. And he did.
So did your husband get the news first?
He did, yeah.
Who called him?
My brother was there. And what had happened was my dad said that he had wanted to go to speak to his ex-wife. And I had asked him the night before, I believe you're going to the beach house to speak to your wife, why? And he said, Chane, if we've got to part ways, I'm okay with that, but I just need closure and I want to see her face to face. Because up until then, she had said that they were going to separate over the phone. And so again, we thought nothing of it. And my brother said, I'll take you there. And when they got to the house, my brother said, my father said to my brother, do you mind if I have a little bit of privacy with her? And he said, not a problem, Dad. I'll just go get something to eat and just call me when you're done. And he went to a driving range close by. And when he had got his food, he got the call. And after that...
And the call was from the then wife?
No. It was, it was from the wife. And when he got there, to this day, Matthew suffers massively from claustrophobia because he said the press were there, the ambulance were there, the neighbours were there, the police were there. And he just said he can never get that scene out of his mind.
Did he get told exactly on the phone what was happening?
Yeah.
So what was the phone call between your stepmom and your brother?
She said, Matthew, I'm sorry to tell you, but your dad has taken his own life.
So literally your father, your brother stepped out the house as in, go get a meal. And then he gets a phone call waiting for his meal basically to arrive saying, your father just took his own life.
Yeah.
So he goes to the house and sees this massive scene and what happens next?
So for a long time, Matthew said to us, I think it was also quite a shock because he had then called my husband and my husband told me. And I asked Chaz, how did he do it? I started asking and shouting so many questions and he said, I don't know. And I said, you do know? And he said, I promise you, I don't know.
Did he not know?
He didn't know, no.
Because he hadn't gone in yet.
He hadn't, so Matthew hadn't told him and Chaz didn't ask. I think that they had just tried to absorb what they had just been told. And we immediately packed our bags. We immediately headed back to Benoni, to where my sister was. And she didn't know either. And I had to call her and tell her. And I'll never forget, one of the first things she said is, you need to remain calm. You need to make sure that Oliver's okay. And at that point...
Because you were pregnant at the time.
Because I was pregnant.
Yeah.
And at that point, I'd completely, if I'm perfectly honest, I completely forgot that I was pregnant.
Yeah.
And we started driving back and I put on the radio because it was just so silent. And that's actually how I found out how he did it.
What?
Yeah.
So what did you hear on the radio? Because at this point, all you knew is he took his own life, but you didn't have details.
No.
Play out for me what you were hearing.
As I switched the radio on, they said, news just in, Westner takes bullet right side to the head.
Wow.
Yeah. And I just went to shock. I turned to Chaz and I said, that's how he did it. And he was so panicked, he immediately turned the radio off. He said, that's enough, I don't want you to hear anything else. And we drove to my sister, and by then Matthew had already gotten onto a flight from KZN and had landed in Joburg. And I walked to Matthew and he was almost calm. I understand it now to be shock, but he wasn't crying, he wasn't shaking. And I ran to him and I said, are you okay? Are you okay? And he said, are you okay? But so calm and so relaxed. He said, are you okay? I said, Matthew, are you okay? And he said, come in. Have you been to the hospital? Is Oliver okay? And I remember, Philiswa, I can 100% relate to what you've just said. Everything just slowed down in that moment. And we sat together as a family and we just cried and cried and cried and cried. And after that, for a long time, Matthew said to us, I said, Matthew, did you see Daddy? And he said, no. And only after 4 months did he sit me down one night and he said to me, you need to know I did see Dad. And I said, why didn't you tell me? And he said, because you were pregnant and I didn't want you to know. And he said, and I regret going to see him, but he said, it was such a shock to me that I knew I had to see him. He said, everybody was pushing me back. And he said, I had to go see him, Chane, or I would have never believed it's true.
Yeah.
And I sympathize so much with Matthew because he said for a year that image is what he woke up with and it's what he went to bed with.
Yeah.
And my sister was the one that said, I know he would have left us a note. And I said, he didn't leave us a letter, Jenny. He would have never done this, if there was any, if he had a sane mindset. And we went to go look in his room and we found a note that said, to my kids, I've left you something on my laptop. And there was a policeman that confiscated the laptop, and we asked them, we need to know if there's something on there, and they found the letter and they sent it to us.
So had they already, at this point, ruled it as a suicide, or they were still kind of investigating?
So it had to be investigated.
Yes.
But they had ruled it as a suicide. And what was especially difficult is, Philiswa, you say as well, a lot of people that I've spoken to that's lost a loved one to suicide, some have had a note and some haven't. Some have said to me, I wish there was a note so that I could get closure. The reality is my father left us a note and we didn't feel that it brought us any closure whatsoever. In fact, it raised more questions as to why.
So what was it that you found on the laptop?
So there was a number of things he had addressed, and just how remorseful he felt and how he adored us and how he would never ever want to subject us to any pain or any hurt. And he asked us not to remember him for what he did. He said that he had his heart so shattered by his wife that he couldn't find the will to carry on living. And he said it's like waking up in your own mess each and every single day of your life. And I think that's especially why, Lebo, what I want people to know is we don't by any means have we ever blamed his ex-wife for his passing. The decision to take his own life was made by him. It's human nature to get in an argument with a loved one, whether it be your partner, your children, your sister, your brother. However, for someone that is battling with a silent battle of depression, that one remark or that one argument could be the trigger to them taking the step to take their own lives. And for a long time, we couldn't speak about it. All we did say on that specific day was, we have to, as a family, ensure that nobody else goes through this.
And that meaning suffering quietly.
Suffering quietly, but also to ensure that if someone is suffering from depression, that they get help so that it doesn't lead to suicide.
Yeah.
Many people that I've spoken to that have lost a loved one to suicide, many people say, I didn't even know they were suffering from depression, or I didn't even know that they were thinking of taking their own lives. I think society has created, we have not created a safe space to speak about mental health. When you speak about mental health is such a taboo subject to speak about. And for a long time, because my dad growing up, he was on tour a lot, it felt like he was coming home. Philiswa spoke about, you start to wonder, was it a murder? We ourselves asked for the police report, we wanted to make sure that it wasn't foul play. And it's taken us 4 years. A lot of people think that mourning has a time limit on it, and it doesn't. It can affect you 4 years later, as it did that year that he passed. And it's taken us 4 years to finally speak out about it. And it's now that we've chosen, because when COVID hits, almost every second person I was speaking to was saying to me and expressing to me how they feel emotionally and mentally shut down in the dark space that they find themselves in, whether it be because they've lost a loved one to COVID, whether it be a financial knock that they've taken, whether it be as a man, he feels he can't provide for his family because he's lost his job. There's been so many contributing factors during COVID. Suicide has increased by 23%. 1 in 3 South Africans suffer from a mental disorder. And yet, what I found is when we would gather as a group of friends, we will speak about so many different things, but yet we fail to ask, how is your emotional well-being today? Whether you're having a great day or whether you're having a bad day. If you share a great day, it might shed positivity on someone that isn't. Whether you're having a bad day, I can assure you that safe space, those loved ones want to know. And the biggest form of motivation nowadays is through vulnerability, is knowing, heck, if she can speak openly about the fact that she suffers from depression or anxiety, then I shouldn't be ashamed to speak about it either.
And I think that vulnerability is so important. It's only now, I think, we are being forced, like you say, to address the real issues, because COVID brought so many things to the surface through lockdowns, through being forced to be isolated. Philiswa, I'd like to find out from your side, where do you find yourself today? You say that you still are struggling to accept. Where are you in regards to your son's suicide?
I think I'm literally at a point where I take it one day at a time. Some days I wake up and I think I'm getting through it. Some days I wake up and I'm like, I'm nowhere near actually healing. And it's funny because every July, because he passed on 2018, so this will be the 3rd year since he passed. So every July, it's like I find myself in a stage where I'm emotional. Whether I'm happy about something, I cry. Whether I'm sad about something, I just cry. And I at first I didn't realize that it had any link. But then there's a part of me, in my subconscious that knows that this is the time, specifically this week where it happened. So I think I also need some help. And I'm happy because I'm part of an organization where even my colleagues are those people who actually even advocate for such things, because coming also from the Black community, as much as we are progressing, especially as the youth, I think we have not been allowed spaces where, well, not fully, if I can maybe say that, where we can actually sit with our elders and talk about the things that are bothering us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's those moments where you find yourself feeling alone, even when you shouldn't, because you think, oh no, it should be accepted that death comes in however form. And yeah, after the mourning period, which we do, like for a month or 3 months, then everyone expects life to go on as if everything's okay. But for me, I think because I've had series of loss, as not specifically through suicide, but all my life, the only thing that I've actually ever known was people losing people one after the other. I think it kind of touched me more because I was finally at a point where things were starting to look up for me. I'd finally gotten a job. Life was, becoming okay. And then just when I was starting to put my life together and I had a dream and a vision of how I wanted to live my life, that one very important element of all of that just gets to be taken away. So it kind of like, in a way, set me back. And it drove me back to the time when his father passed, because he was also like a parent to me. So I kind of felt like, a series of events happening at the same time. And the other funny part is that after 10 years, because he passed on the 2018, his brother, it was 2008. My mother was 1998. My father was 1988. So every 10 years, there is something that is bound to happen. And I don't just lose any member of the family. It just becomes that one specific person who's literally like that important to me. Like, it's something, we're coming from the Black community where some people even, I know it's taboo, but there are those beliefs where people talk about curses and things. So it also even drove me to that state where I'm like, could I be cursed? And some of the things that I would want to do, and sometimes I find myself not being able to do because I'm like, what's the point? I'm literally always in a state where I know something is bound to end. Even if it's not ending today, it's like death is constantly on my neck, and I'm thinking about it all the time. And I think because of that, I also even speak about it a lot to my son. And I know it can be a depressing state to him as well, but it's like, because I don't want to also find myself in a situation where I die, whether by natural causes or any other thing, and I leave him with no answers. It's like I'm slowly writing a diary of my life through him, where he will have all the answers that he requires, because I wouldn't want him going through exactly the same thing that I've been going through. But I am healing. This is also part of that. The fact that I'm here talking about it, because there were moments where, if you ask me, even when he passed, I couldn't cry. I couldn't get there. I didn't want to see him in that state. So I was running away from dealing with it, but I guess I'm starting to finally face the reality and heal as I progress.
And I just hope that your healing journey continues. Like you say, being able to even sit as part of this conversation. I can't imagine how difficult that is for you when you're still grappling with the fact that at such a young age, not only did his life end, but that he took it. And I can't thank you enough for being able to have this conversation with us. From your side, Chane, any final words that you'd like people to know?
Absolutely. There is something that I feel is incredibly crucial for people to know. I understand the mindset of getting to the point of thinking that if your life feels like it has ended already, that suicide might be the only option for you. I can tell you it's absolutely not the case. Suicide simply passes on that problem to everybody you leave behind. There is
so it doesn't end the pain,
Absolutely.
It just passes it on to
Absolutely.
other people. Yes.
And there are such phenomenal programs out there. I'm friends with many people that live the life they dreamt of when they were in such a dark place and suffering from depression. They were brave enough to get help, some of which with the mindset of thinking, how will this make a difference? And they will actively say how it has improved their life and given them the life they always dreamt of. When it comes to many people that I've spoken to that suffer from depression, a lot of the time they'll say it's quite a costly expense to get help. Absolutely not. The South African Depression and Anxiety Board has a hotline that you can call at any given time, and you can stay on the line with them as long as possible. There are a number of churches in and around the country that have phenomenal counseling programs. So if there is someone out there that feels that their life has come to an end, especially in what we find quite a critical time in our country, reach out. It will be the most valuable asset you will ever invest in yourself.
And of course, we will be sharing all of those details where people can get that type of help, like the Suicide Crisis Line, Lifeline, SEDAG, and all those organizations. Thank you so much to the both of you. Condolences, Philiswa, condolences to you, Chane, on both your losses. I'm so sorry for what you've both had to go through, and your families as well. And I just wish you just a continued healing journey, and for you to continue to also speak out, because I think the more that we speak about these type of things, the more people will be helped.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. #Unpacked with Relebogile. I think when we just take the time to have conversations around mental health, but also to have conversations with how they affect the loved ones that were affected, we get to see that you don't need to suffer alone. Other people will be in pain with you. Other people feel with you. And I hope, especially if you're feeling alone, if you're watching and feeling like you don't have help, you don't have access to anybody, that you stay for the screen at the end where all the details will be included. And just for us to dedicate today's episode to all of those that have lost their lives to suicide and depression. We really feel for your families, but more importantly, for those final moments that you had to face on your own. I hope you are all finally at peace. Thank you for joining us. Have a good night. Next time on Unpacked.
I always had a feeling of abandonment. I had a gateway emotion. That downer of the ecstasy was the gateway for me to use heroin. I get to work, I'm hot, I'm cold, I'm puking bile. I don't understand what is wrong with me. I'm shivering, my muscles are sore, my body is aching. I'm officially an addict.
Unpacked with Relebogile Mabotja. New episodes weekdays at 5:30 p.m. on my YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe. Television edited broadcasts weekdays at 5 p.m. Open up to S3.